Yesterday in a video, I told people that I'm probably not going to be carrying revolvers anymore. They're just getting to be a little bit too hard on the ears and the elbows, if you know what I mean, because I shoot .357 Magnum. Now, a lot of people said, well, just get a revolver in a semi-auto caliber, like a 9mm. And I'm going to pretend those people didn't say that, because putting an inferior semi-auto caliber in a revolver is basically blasphemy. I would rather carry nothing than commit such a sin, so I am not even going to consider that option. But I am going to have to choose another gun. And a lot of people ask me, well, what gun is it you're going to choose? Because I said, maybe I'll choose something more modern. So in looking for a new carry gun, I looked at several guns and weighed the pros and cons of each. So let me show you the guns I looked at, and then I'll show you what I ended up choosing. Now, the first gun I considered was maybe a custom Glock. That would be a lot more modern. So that's a pro. It's a more modern gun. It's a very reliable gun. That's a pro. Another pro is it's easily customizable. You can do anything you want to it. This one can be either in 40 or 9. I've got it made as a 40 with a 9 conversion barrel. I could switch the caliber if I wanted to. So there's lots of pros to this gun. But there's also some cons. One is it's striker fired. I'm not the biggest striker fired fan. And it's polymer. Don't really like polymer. I could live with it, but it's not my favorite. Then I thought maybe something like my Strike 1. I really like this gun. This gun's got a lot of pros. It's got a really good trigger. It's really easy to handle because of that low bore axis. There's almost no recoil whatsoever. It's kind of a unique gun. It's definitely a modern gun. That's a pro, but it also has its cons. It's also striker fired, which I'm not a big fan of. And you're limited in the type of sights you can get for it. They're not as easy to find. This gun's not as easy to customize. And once again, this is also polymer. Another drawback to this one, another con, is that it's only 9mm. I'm not the biggest 9mm fan. I'm not saying 9mm is not effective, but it would not be my preferred caliber. So this gun has some strikes against it. Okay, the next gun I looked at and considered was my P01, my CZ75 P01. This gun's got a lot of pros. For one, it's hammer fired, not striker fired. That's a big pro. It's also got a metal frame. It has an aluminum alloy frame. That's a big pro. So it's really looking good so far. Then you add that it's really easy to shoot. It's got great ergonomics and got a little accessory rail up here. I could add something to it if I wanted to. I'm not as big on adding things to carry guns as I am home defense guns, but if I wanted to, it has the option. It's also decocker only. It's got a decent trigger on it. So this gun is really good, looking really good in the pro department, but it does have some cons. One con is the sights on these are not as easy to change or find good sights for, so that's a negative, that's a con. Also, the way the slide sits inside the frame is kind of a negative to me. Since I am having trouble with some arthritis, being able to grab that reduced size slide there is difficult. It's difficult under the best of circumstances. If the gun is slick or your hands are wet or anything else, it makes it even harder. So even though it's a great gun, it does have some negatives. So this gun was in the running, but like I said, there were some negatives, and also you have to add in the fact that this is also 9mm. I'm not the biggest 9mm fan, so that kind of pushed it out of the running. Next, I considered a Beretta 92, like my Brigadier here. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, that's not very modern. Well, I've moderned this one up a little bit. I've converted it to a decocker only. I've put night sights on it. I even have a laser guide rod in it. So it's a little bit modern. And it's got a lot of other pros. One pro being it's my favorite semi-auto gun ever. I love the Beretta 92s. It also, like I said, it's hammer fired, not striker fired. It's got good capacity. It's all metal frame. It doesn't have a polymer frame to it. Great sights on this gun. You can always find sights for the Beretta 92. It's got a good trigger. So like everything about this gun until you start considering some of the negatives that aren't big negatives, but they're still negatives. One of them being it is a 9mm. Now I could use a 96 with a 40, but I'm not really crazy about 40s either. I mean, I like them. I think they're a better gun than the 9mm, better caliber than the 9mm, but I don't really know if I want to carry a 40. Another negative to this gun is it is kind of big, but I could overcome that. That's not a big problem for me. One other negative, though, I will point out is even though it is all metal construction, it's an aluminum alloy frame, much like the CZ. I'm not as crazy about aluminum alloys as I am having an all steel gun. I'd prefer to have all steel. But still, this gun is by most standards a positive. It's definitely would be in the running because I like most everything about it except for the caliber, which I could do something about. I could get the 96 instead. And like I said, I'm not crazy about polymer frames, and it's a little big. But still, this gun was definitely one of my top considerations. Now, the next gun I considered here was my Tit Sauce BR9 stainless steel. Now, this is basically a high power. Now, I know what you're going to say. Well, that's not modern at all. Well, this is a new clone of one, so it's a little more modern. They ain't made these for very long. Still, it's an old design. But I like this gun. It's a really good gun. It shoots easy. It's reliable now. It's got great ergonomics. It's got good capacity. And it's got an all stainless body and frame. Much easier to care for. I even prefer stainless. I definitely prefer steel over aluminum, and I prefer stainless steel over carbon steel because it's easier to care for. So this gun had a lot of things going for it. Hammer fired. This has even got the safe fire kit on it, or the safe fast fire, whatever they call it, kit on it. So this gun was definitely in the running, but it does have some negatives also. One negative is it gave me a horrible rash when I was carrying it because of the custom grips here, which I could change those. The other negative is it is also 9mm. So there's that. I'd have to settle for 9mm. There's one other negative here. It's impossible to find sights for this gun, to find night sights for it, and I like to have night sights on one of my guns. This here has not got the same size beveled dovetail here as a standard high power. I don't know why they did that, but you cannot use high power sights on it. Like if you wanted to go buy a Novak sight or something, won't fit it. So that's a huge negative because I can't get the kind of sights I want on it. And then there's one other huge negative also. The gun's made in freaking Turkey. Do I want to carry a gun made in Turkey? I don't think so. So that kind of eliminated this gun as my daily carry. So after looking at all those guns and weighing the pros and cons, what did I actually end up choosing? Well, I'll show you. What I chose, and this will be no surprise to anyone who actually watches my channel or pays attention to my Instagram, was my Sig Sauer STX 1911. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, that's not getting a very more modern carry gun. Well, yeah, when you compare it to a revolver, it's much more modern. Revolvers were around way before 1911s were, so it's more modern. And plus, look, this one's been completely redesigned. The slide is squared off, not rounded off. So, you know, totally modern, right? And on top of all that, I pretty much like everything about this gun. Stainless frame, stainless slide, easy to care for, hammer fired with a really light trigger. All match grade internals, everything in this gun is made very well. Good night sights already on it. I could buy any sights I wanted for it, but it already came with good night sights. It doesn't bite me because of the beaver tail. Also, it's not 9mm, it's 45 ACP. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of 45 ACP, not because I think it's not a good round, but because I don't think it's the best at anything. But one thing it is really good at, and that's why they call it 45 AARP, is it's good at being a great round for people like myself that are suffering from arthritis, etc. Because a good stout 1911, a good sturdy gun like this handles the recoil from the 45 very well. It's a little pushy, but it's not at all stingy or snappy like the 357 Magnum, which is what causes the pain. So it's a much better caliber for someone with my issues. Now, this gun does have some negatives, the biggest negative being that it has a safety. And I've always said in the past that I prefer a carry gun to not have a safety, and I still feel that way. An optimal carry gun would not have a safety. But I've gotten to a stage in my life where optimal is not the same for me as it is for everything else. The general optimal doesn't apply to me because of what the optimal guns are don't seem to work as well with my, arthritic fingers anymore. So having the safety and the really light trigger is better for me now. It's not optimal, but it's better for me. Now, another con some people might point out is that it only holds 8+1 rounds for 9 rounds. But my old revolvers held either 7 or 8. Plus none. So it holds more rounds than my revolver did. So that's actually a positive in my opinion. Plus, even though revolvers are not as hard to reload as a lot of people think, and I've demonstrated that in videos before. If you want to see one of the videos I did that in, I'll put a link in the corner. But still, this being magazine fed means it reloads a little faster. It's not as much of a difference as a lot of people would like to say, like I said, but it still is a little faster, and it's easier to carry reloads because they're small single stack magazines, so it's easier to carry them. So the capacity doesn't bother me at all. So in the end, I just decided that this would now be the best gun for me. Does that mean I like 1911s better than revolvers now? No. Does it mean I think a 1911 is the optimal carry gun? No. I just think it's best for me and my circumstances. And that's why I think you see a lot of older people carry it, because it's best for them and their circumstances too. Like I said, it handles recoil well, you can get subsonic ammo, you can easily suppress it. There's just so many pluses when you get older to the 1911. So that's why from now on when you see me, especially today when it's every second matters day and I'll be open carrying, I'll be carrying a 1911.